So my name is Ryan O'Reilly. I'm about to perform at Panama. And this is also the last day of a tour that I've been on, so it's nice to finish it back in Stuttgart again.
Vielen Dank. It's lovely to be here in Stuttgart. So, my name is Ryan O'Reilly. Don't worry if you don't know me, because I don't know you either. If you Google search my name, you will find out about a Canadian ice hockey player. The way to tell the difference is he's a little bit younger than me and he's a millionaire. But he seems to be like a really nice guy. You can follow him and buy his merchandise on Instagram. I have some CDs for sale. I know that nobody buys CDs anymore, so it's a strange business model, but I didn't study economics. But if you hang them in your garden, they scare away the vogel from eating the user. But you need to buy 3 or 4 for that to work efficiently.
The biggest shows that I've done were opening for much bigger artists, so you get that experience of walking out onto a stage and saying, oh, there's 2,000 people here. But I'm not at that stage of my career where they're going to all come to see me. But even those experiences, like when I think of my favourite shows, those walking onto and seeing 2,000 people in a theatre are mixed in with the best Von Zimmer concerts or unusual shows where everybody was so engaged with the songs.
In the last days before the end of summer, then the snow descends. She led me through her town to see the opera. I pictured all of the places I could go with her, 'cause I've never seen the northern lights or a sun.
When I was first writing songs, the 2 or 3 songs that brought me to lots of different places, whether it was playing for the Qatari royal family or going to Hollywood, going to like all over Germany, there was like 2 or 3 songs that people really responded to, and I kind of wrote them without thinking about it. I couldn't do it again if I tried, but then the other songs that people like, I worked really hard at trying to figure out sort of what was so good about the songs that I kind of wrote in my sleep. And so, you know, it's a real combination between those 2 things. You can get somewhere through craft, and you can get somewhere through like the touch of the fates and the muses and everything. In some ways it's about the craft. You should get good enough at your craft that I could go into a writing session uninspired and still be like, okay, I know how to write a song, I know how to set this out and do a good job. Or you could wake up and say, here's the song. Or you could do all these crazy things and say, oh, today I'll only play the mandolin and I'll sort of, you know, walk backwards around the block before I start. And they can all work. There's a good kind of concept that Brian Eno had with David Bowie of so Brian Eno would write these instructions on cards, and they could be like the drummer has to play the guitar today for the whole day, or you know, you have to sing all the songs like 3 octaves or an octave too low or something. And he would give David Bowie or Phil Collins or whoever else he was working with these cards, and they were designed to limit your options, because I think the hardest thing for creativity is having too many options. So if you wake up and there's no limit to what you could do, it's almost impossible. You're paralyzed by the thought of even beginning. Whereas if you're suddenly limited, think that the biggest thing I learned was from street performing. And I've got respect for all types of street performing. It's not an easy thing to do. But we were like the ones in Covent Garden. We'd have a big crowd around us and we would do a show. It was a show we'd play 7 or 8 songs. And then at the end of it, I would say, these are all original songs. If you want to own this, if you want to take this home, the only place you can get this is from our guitar case. And they would fall in on us and they would buy everything. So we would make really good money from that. It's the most CDs I ever sold, way more than when we had a record label, PR company, we were on the radio. The most was on the street in Portobello Road.
This is a song about how easy it is to become rich and famous playing music. We can't all be DJs, but you know, we try our best.
I think the reason that people still come to see me 10 years later, whether it's in a small town in Italy or in the north of Norway or in Canada or wherever, and they say, I saw you on the street that day, is because they felt like they discovered me, and that the relationship is slightly different than if I'd been pitched to them in a magazine. Like, there's a whole layer of people telling you that then, but with how people discovered my music, they felt an ownership of it, and it was linked to memory. So the amount, like, I can't tell you the amount of times that people say that I remind them of London or their trip to London. Anytime they hear one of my songs, especially from that time, they instantly remember London, Portobello Road, West London, and I think those two things combined mean that the decision feels like it was more their decision to make, and they kind of take ownership of that and feel very loyal to me, which is, you know, I wish I could pretend as if I knew that was going to happen. I didn't, but like, that's kind of what I've concluded after 10 years.
So this next song is Special Requests by Tillman, and for Sarah, and especially for Emily, because I wrote a song many years ago called Emily. So and I knew in the Zukunft, in the future, that
if you think about music, you know, when you kind of dive into something like the Odyssey or the Iliad or like those kind of classical literature, before they were written down, they were sung to each other, and you know, the sort of African American gospel hymns, like they kind of came from the plantations. They were sung to each other. That the people communicate kind of first and foremost through melody, and it's easier to remember. And it can, a bit like I guess some of the other senses have it as well, but like, you know, when you smell a perfume and it takes you back to a certain place, like years ago, it could be a first girlfriend or how your grandmother's room smelled or something. Music has that as well, so it's it works on a couple of different levels that yeah, that's just very primal.
the last day that you and I were leaving in your dad's car, Emily, I was trying to fix something you had just broken. I said, you know, if you need to go, you can always just leave this with me. I stared at the handprints on your bedroom wall. They're really like mine to keep you safe from it all. Your brother...
Street performing is about passion, it's about integrity, because you're not hiding behind any effects. It's very real and raw. So I thought, okay, well, those are the things that define me as an artist and us as a band when we were touring. People want to hear real songs sung passionately and performed honestly.
Emily, it's 4 in the morning, the voices get closer to my front door as I my drink. If you're still here, maybe you try and help me.
You also, as an artist, don't ever want to feel confined to one thing. So, like, look at the careers of the classic example being Bob Dylan, going electric, or even the Beatles and all their sort of experimentation. But so if you take the example of Bob Dylan going electric, that was not just breaking with people's image of him. It was actively challenging it to the point where they were upset with him. But it was the right thing to do. The music was incredible, but people weren't there yet. That's almost the other role of an artist, is to lead the way. So if people say, "Oh, you're this," I think a certain type of artist will always say, "Okay, you think I'm this, and I'm no longer that anymore." So a bit like with the creativity question, it's like there's a duality to it, that you want to sit in this place where you are the most authentic version of yourself, but you also want to tear down all the walls at the same time and be something completely different.
That should be a trombone, but I don't have one. In the glow of the lamp, there is something that's dying. It's stuck where it is, but it longs to be free. If you were still here, maybe you'd try and help me, and I would just freeze after saying, "Emily, oh, the towns in the lights, and the year I was born, rearranged above the place where you used to wait for me. Nobody searches for my face in the crowd, oh, since the day you left me, Emily." Vielen Dank.
As an Irishman, when you walk into somewhere and you get handed a beer straight away, then it's a good sign.